everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. Yes, He did. Whoa, everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. I know He did. He picked me up, turned me all around, placed my feet on solid ground. Everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. I know He did. I said everything that happened to me that was good, the Lord did it. I know He did. Yes, everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. Yes, He did. See, once I was lost out in the world of sin, Jesus came and He took me on in. Everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. Yes, He did. I said everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. Everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. I know He did. See, once I was sick, I thought I couldn't get well. He healed my body, and now I got to tell that everything that happened to me that was good, God did it. God did it, and I thank Him today. God did it. I praise His name. He picked me up, turned me all around. He put my feet on solid ground. When I was lost out in a world of sin, Jesus came and He took me on in. When I was sick, thought I couldn't get well, He healed my body, and now I can tell. I said yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Who made the mountain? Who made the trees? Who made the river flow out to the seas? Who hung the moon in the starry sky? Who gives me faith that'll never die? Who made the flowers bloom in the spring? Who writes the songs for the robin to sing? Yes, He did. Who made the mountain? Who made the trees? Who made the rivers flow out to the sea? Who hung the moon in the starry sky? Somebody bigger than you and I. Somebody than you and I. And I say yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I say yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Who did it?
Let us read together. Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we'd better get on with it, strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eye on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we are in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He would put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honor, right alongside God. When you find yourselves flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item. That long litany of hostility he plowed through, that will shoot adrenaline into your souls as you have your seats in the presence of the Lord. The writers of the pastoral letters, we know them by the names of Paul, James, Peter, John, and the unnamed authors who wrote pastoral letters in our Bible. Those writers used languages and used metaphors to which and with which their readers and their hearers could relate. The audiences who heard the epistle of John, the epistle of Peter, or who read those letters, they did not spend all of their time reading Torah or Tanakh in the Jewish congregations, nor did they have all their attention taken by the highly sophisticated syllogisms of the Socratic method, the Platonic platitudes, or the Aristotelian arguments in the non-Jewish Greek-influenced houses of worship. In other words, church folk in their day, just like church folk in our day, liked some other things. They enjoyed some other pastimes, and they lived their lives fully with their families, which is what normal human beings do. The Almighty God was real to them, yes, but so were the athletic games just as real. And we all caught up today in the Olympics. The Olympics is worldwide, involves billions of dollars. But athletic games in Greece and athletic games in the Greek colonies were just as important in the first century as baseball, football, and basketball are in the United States in the 21st century. In other words, if the Apostle Paul had been born in the 21st century and not in the first century, if Paul had been born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and not Tarsus, Paul would have been glued to his set watching Alabama whip up on everybody that came onto the field. Paul loved athletics, and Paul often used athletic metaphors to make his points come alive for believers. Paul says what? I have fought a good fight. I have finished the race. Winners in the Greek races had a laurel wreath, a crown placed on their heads to show that they were victorious. And Paul says in 2 Timothy, the 4th chapter, finally at the end of the race, there is laid up for me the laurel wreath of victory, the crown of righteousness. All over the Greek islands, which dot the Mediterranean, there are stadiums and remnants of stadiums, some small, some medium, some humongous, places where the games used to be played, where the races used to be run, where folk gathered to cheer for their favorite competitor or their favorite team. When my wife, Rhema, and I were in Rhodes, R-H-O-D-S, Rhodes is a tiny, little, insignificant island, as small and as beautiful, some would say, as Santorini Island in the Mediterranean. On the island of Rhodes, Rhema and I did not take any of the guided tours that you pay for when you're traveling on a cruise ship. We just walked off the ship by ourselves with our cameras. We had a whole day in Rhodes, and we wanted to explore by ourselves, for ourselves, without the guides who always seem to guide you to the merchants, who give you a discount and give your guide a kickback, plus the percentage that the cruise ship gets for guiding shoppers into their shops. We had had enough shop till you drop Hellenic hype. So my wife and I went off by ourselves just to look at the ancient island with its historic memories and fascinating ruins. And we were surprised to find sports arenas, several of them, dotting the island, places where people used to gather to worship, to worship athletics, enjoying the games like they worship God, enjoy the races, to relax. The readers and the hearers of the pastoral letters that circulated through those same islands, Crete, Patmos, Alexandria, they loved athletics. They knew athletics. They understood athletics. So the writers used language, athletic language, and metaphors to which their readers could relate. And the writer of the book of Hebrews was no different. After 40 verses of calling the roll of the runners in this long distance race, this Christian race, after 40 verses, the writer of Hebrews paints a picture. We call it the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Faith, Hebrews 11. After 40 verses in Hebrews 11, the writer paints this athletic picture that every reader, every hearer would understand. He says, these runners who have finished their race are now up in the stands pulling for us, cheering us on and encouraging us. What a powerful passage. The New International Version starts off chapter 12 saying, since we are surrounded by. But the 17th century translation that I read for you at first, the King James we call it, says compass, C-O-M-P-A-S-S, like a compass. They're in a circle. They're in a stand in the arena surrounding the track. Since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, and that's what I want to use as a talk title for the time we have together this morning. Since we're surrounded by folk up in the stand, look who's in the stands. Peterson calls them pioneers who blazed the way. Look who's in the stands. Peterson says they are veterans who are cheering us on. The Greek says that they are witnesses, and witnesses means that you see something. In the stands, there are folk who can see us. In the stands are pioneers of the faith who are watching us. In other words, we're not alone. Those who ran this race before us are watching us. In the tradition out of which I come, the African roots of our tradition teach that there are 3 generations present with us right now in this sanctuary. 3 generations present, not just today, but every day. 3 generations present with us at all times. The first generation is the generation that you can see with your natural eye, your human eye. And there are many different age sets. You saw that big family come up for the baby dedication? Same as in this sanctuary. You got grandparents who are part of the same generation, great-grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. All are part of the one generation that you can see. But there are 2 other generations who are present with us, 2 generations that you cannot see. One of the generations that you cannot see, the second generation present with us, is the unborn generation. Right now, right here in the wombs and loins of the worshipers gathered in this sanctuary this Sunday, there's a generation of those who are headed this way. You and I can't see them, but God can see them. David says what? You knit me together in my mother's womb. God can see them. God's self says to Jeremiah, before you were born, I called you while you were yet in your mother's womb. The unborn generation, the generation headed this way, is present with us. My Aunt Hattie, my great aunt, knew something about that generation. I'll tell you about her in a minute. But then there is another generation also present with us. That is the generation of those who have passed this way, the generation who have now slipped past the veil of time and who traffic now in eternity. They live with God, but they're still alive. You and I can't see them, but they can see us. Those are the ones the writer of Hebrews says are watching us. Those who live on the other side of time in eternity. Those in whose honor Africans pour libation, and those names they call when pouring libation in loving memory, based on the African principle that as long as love lives, they will live in our lives among us. Because love lives beyond death and love lives beyond the grave. One of my primary mentors, Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor, calls them a part of God's meta, M-E-T-A, meta history that impinges upon human history and only manifests itself to us in fleeting glimpses. Ask anybody, not just black people, not just African Americans, ask anybody who has lost a loved one to be honest with you and to tell you about those instances where they thought they caught a glimpse of something or someone out of the corner of their eye, and they turned quickly to see who it was or what it was, only there was nothing there, no one that they could see. They thought they were losing their mind. No, that was God's meta history, a dimension of reality not subject to the rules of normality, making itself manifest to us in fleeting glimpses. Witnesses, Hebrews 12 calls them, watching us. Now, prisoners of post-Kantian, post-Enlightenment modernity, y'all got a big university down there, University of Louisville. They poo-poo all such possibilities because it falls outside the realm of what they have experienced. And they label all such accounts as paranormal. No, they are supernatural, above the natural, beyond what the natural can comprehend. Theologians call it a mystery. There are no words that can adequately capture being exposed to Dr. Proctor's meta-history. Matthew, Mark, and Luke each tell the story of Jesus. And I love this because when I was at the University of Chicago, that's a very left-brain school. They said all that stuff is superstitious, it's not real, it has no validity. I said, well, what about Samuel? Remember Samuel? King Saul came to Samuel and said, I need to talk to somebody who ain't around no more. That's Old Testament, that's Old Testament. I'm a New Testament Christian. Well, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are all in the New Testament. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke each tell the story of Jesus taking Peter, James, and John with him up a mountain one day, and God pulling back that veil between time and eternity just long enough for Peter, James, and John to see Jesus talking to Moses and Elijah. Moses had been dead 1,000 years. Elijah had been dead 500 years. Dead by human definitions, but alive and living with God by holy definition. What Dr. Rudolf Otto calls das Heilige, das ganz andere, the holy other, the mysterium tremendum, the mysterium fascinans, the inexplicable. They are a part of the generation of witnesses who are watching us. Look who's in the stands. Witnesses who are watching us. In my own personal life, I said I'd tell you about my Aunt Hattie. She was really my great aunt. She was my father's aunt. She raised my dad along with his father after his mother had died. Aunt Hattie was one of those southern-born women, born with a veil over her eyes. She could see stuff. My sister and I were scared of Aunt Hattie. We stayed away from Aunt Hattie. When I was stationed at Great Lakes Naval Medical Center, my wife and I were stationed at Great Lakes, and the rabbit died. Now, all my millennials, let me see the hands of millennials. Y'all don't know what the rabbit dying means. Y'all go to Walgreens and CVS and get that little red thing with the pink dot. Back in the day, they used to take the mama's blood and inject it into the rabbit, and if the rabbit died, that meant the girl was pregnant. And the rabbit died. Our firstborn was about to be born. I ran to the phone, and I called back to Philadelphia. My mother and father lived in Philadelphia. Aunt Hattie lived in Philadelphia. And I called home all excited. Mommy, she said, calm down, Aunt Hattie told us. I said, Aunt Hattie told you what? She said, your wife pregnant, she's going to have a high yellow baby with red hair born in June. Our oldest daughter, Janet, was born June 23rd. High yellow with red hair. Scared of Aunt Hattie. 16 months later, when Janet was 16 months old, my wife was pregnant again. Janet woke up in the middle of the night, little Janet, screaming in her room. We lived then, I was stationed at Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland. We ran into her room. Baby, what's that? Man, man, man. I said, there's no man over there, baby. She just wants to sleep in our bed, that's all it is. No, man, man, man. No, man. I picked her up out of her crib, took her to the front door, showed her the chain was on the door. We chained the door. She knew about the chain because when Mama was at work and I was babysitting, I'd go downstairs to wash my car. I had a bad ride, y'all. I had a Valiant. And when I went downstairs to wash my Valiant, Janet would climb up in the window, watch me, put the chain on so nobody could come in. We lived on the second floor. I said, see, the chain is on. Nobody can get in here. There's no man. No, man, man. I said, what's the man look like? Pop, pop. I said, my father or your mother's father? No, pop, pop, pop. She meant my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. Our maternal grandparents moved into our house. My mother and father moved into our house when I was in the 7th grade. Grandma got dementia, Alzheimer's. Grandpa couldn't take care of her down the country. They didn't believe in no senior citizen living assisted place. They didn't believe in the nursing home. They moved them into our home. So they lived with us from the 7th grade. In fact, my grandmother died the night of my senior prom. Grandpa kept right on living with us. So I'm stationed at Bethesda. We drive up to see Grandpa because he was 92 years old. He had cancer all throughout his body. We drive up every other weekend. He said, boy, stop driving up here to see me. I'm fine. I ain't going nowhere till I see my great-grandson. You the only boy in this family. I'm tired of looking at your face. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I said, baby, you know where Grandma lives? My mama? Yeah, that's way up in Philadelphia. You know how we drive to Philadelphia? Mm-hmm. I said, that's where Papa Pop is. No, right there, right there. I said, I'm telling you, she just wants to sleep in her bed. I said, no, baby, he's in Philadelphia with Grandma. I tried to put her back in the crib. She started screaming again. Put her in our bed. As soon as I hit the pillow, she gone. See, I told you that's all she wanted. 5 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. I say, hello, my mother said. Aunt Hattie told me to call you. I said, what? She said, the baby's upset. I said, what? They in Philadelphia. I'm in Maryland. She said, Papa died last night. Aunt Hattie said he saw the soul of his incoming great-grandchild, saw it was another girl, saw he had nothing to wait for, so he stopped by to say goodbye to the only great-grandchild he had, and he scared her when he said goodbye to her. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Scared of Aunt Hattie. Aunt Hattie could see the generation coming in because the baby girl was born that Sunday. This was a Tuesday night. She could see the generation that was leaving, the generation in the stand. Look who's in the stand. Witnesses who are watching us. Look who's in the stands. Harriet Tubman, looking to see if we're still trying to get free. Look who's in the stands. Ida B. Wells, watching to see if we're still turning our backs on the poor. Look who's in the stands. W.E.B. Du Bois, watching to see if we've learned how to live together or if we're still circling the racist wagons in our silo mentalities. Look who's in the stands. Richard Allen, watching to see if we're still bowing at the altar of white supremacy. Look who's in the stands. Women preachers, Jarena Lee, watching to see if we're still bowing at the altar of sexism when it comes to women preachers. Look who's in the stands. The founders of African Methodism, waiting to see if we're still tripping over the word African, the culture of African, the rhythms of Africa, the ring shout of Africa. Look who's up in the stands. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, watching to see if the AMEs are going to distance themselves from Dr. James Cone's book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, the same way they distanced themselves from his sermon, God is a Negro, in an age of color blindness and self-hatred. Look who's up in the stands. United States sailors killed aboard the USS Liberty, killed by the Israeli Navy and Israeli Air Force, watching to see if we're still covering up the lies about the so-called Six-Day War. Look who's up in the stands, the countless souls of the strange fruit, strung up and left hanging from trees in a country that was taught to hate them because of the color of their skin. Hung, men castrated, women violated, bodies mutilated, black men, women, and children, watching to see if we still don't understand yet how the Tea Party ain't nothing but a 2.0 upgrade of a lynch party. Look who's in the stand. Watching us Troy Davis, killed by a racist legal system in Georgia. Trayvon Martin, killed by a vigilante in Florida. Jordan Davis, murdered by a maniac because of his music. Tamir Rice, up in the stands, cut down in Cleveland before he could see his teenage years. Renisha McBride, dead in Detroit for knocking on the wrong door. Look who's in the stands. Oscar Grant, killed in cold blood on the platform of a rapid transit station in Oakland. Michael Brown, left rotting in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri for 4 hours because the prosecutor orchestrated a verdict next to no indictment. Look who's in the stands. Eric Gardner, choked to death in front of a video camera, and his murderer set free by bigoted bozos because of their blindness. Look who's in the stands watching us. Jordan Davis, killed because of his music. Laquan McDonald, killed in Chicago, shot 16 bullets in his body, covered up by a racist mayor with puppet string politicians who authorized a $5.5 million payout, hush money, to keep Negroes from knowing what had happened. And us got bamboozled by Barack to vote for a racist Zionist who don't like black folk, poor folk, or Palestinians. Look who's up in the stands. A minister from Atlanta named Martin, who started a movement for poor people, but whose message is now buried in a monument financed by rich people, whose revisionist history hides what he said about racism, what he said about militarism, what he said about casino capitalism. Look at the monument. None of those sayings are in that monument. They hide Martin's message behind a soundbite. I have a dream. Look who's in the stands. Martin King is watching to see if we've been bamboozled by Beck, hoodwinked by Hannity, or had our minds messed up by Etchescombe, or been trashed by Trump. I told the students at Howard University 5-6 years ago, I don't know which is more painful, seeing millions seduced by a soundbite or seeing a ministry reduced to a soundbite. And I ain't talking about me, I'm talking about Martin. Martin's stand against militarism was reduced to a soundbite. Let freedom ring. Martin's stand against racism was reduced to a soundbite. I have a dream. Martin's fierce critique of consumerism and capitalism was reduced to a soundbite. Free at last, free at last. I don't know which is worse, seeing millions seduced by a soundbite or seeing his ministry reduced to a soundbite. Martin Luther King is in the stands watching to see if we're still drinking the Kool-Aid of Walmartization and mass incarceration, while millions of black children still go to bed hungry every night, killed by the assassins of globalization and miseducation. Look who's up in the stands. The Scottsboro boys watching to see if we can connect the dots between the bodies of Amadou Diallo, Emmett Till, Patrice Lumumba, Medgar Evers, Steve Biko, Huey Newton, and Martin King. Dr. King said, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. Freedom must be demanded by the oppressed. I wonder what racist journalists would do and try to spin that. That Martin said that. Jeremiah Wright didn't say that. Look who's up in the stands. The writer of Hebrews says there are witnesses who are watching. But he also says that there are witnesses who are waiting for us. They have finished their race. And now they're waiting for us to see how we will run our race. The words with patience once again point to the fact that this is a long distance race. Peterson says they're anxiously waiting for us, not just watching and cheering us on, invested in the race that we must run. To use the Apostle Paul's word, they have finished their race. And now they're waiting for us as witnesses as we run our race. Look who's up in the stands. Rosa Parks is waiting on us. Look who's in the stands. Malcolm X is waiting on us. Look who's in the stands. Queen Mother Yaa Asantewaa is waiting on us. Look who's up in the stands. Jean-Jacques Dessalines is waiting on us. Marcus Messiah Garvey is waiting on us. Boukman from Haiti is waiting on us. Adam Clayton Powell from Harlem is waiting on us. Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana is waiting on us. Barbara Jordan from Texas is waiting on us. Chief Albert Lutuli is waiting on us. Langston Hughes is waiting on us. Zora Neale Hurston is waiting on us. Paul Robeson is waiting on us. Bayard Rustin is waiting on us. Emmett Till is waiting on us. Alton Sterling is waiting on us. Philando Castile is waiting on us. Sandra Bland is waiting on us. Gilbert is waiting on us. My Aunt Hattie is waiting on us. My daddy, my mama, my grandmama, my grandpapa, they're waiting on us. waiting to see as a witness if we're going to bow at the altar of Walmart once again, put price above principle, and keep on being bought and paid for like prostitutes. Look who's up in the stands. A. Philip Randolph. The garbage men in Memphis, wearing signs, I am a man. The writer of Hebrews says, look who's in the stands. There are witnesses who are watching, say watching. And there are witnesses who are waiting, say waiting. But this writer of Hebrews says one more thing. He says, in case you get tired, in case you get weary, in case you get frustrated, in case you get down, look again up in those stands, because there's also not just somebody watching, somebody waiting, but there's a winner up in the stand. Peterson translates it, we read it together. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we are in. He is a winner, the thought of whom can shoot some adrenaline into your soul. I don't know about you, but I got my eyes on the one who has won this race. He's a winner. Keep your eyes on the winner. The winner is the one who can help us, help you, help me finish this race. We just got through celebrating a whole bunch of 50th anniversaries. The 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. The 50th anniversary, 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. But the race ain't over yet. We still got some running to do. 20 children killed in Sandy Hook and the whole nation mourned. 300 children killed in Chicago and the nation just yawns. The race ain't over yet. We got a drug problem, yes, but we also got a drone problem. The race ain't over yet. The sentencing gap for crack cocaine users as opposed to cocaine users have been narrowed, but until it's wiped out completely, the race ain't over yet. We got affordable health care, but until everybody gets health care, the race ain't over yet. We still got some work to do, because as the gun sales soar in this nation and Trump looks like he's going to win in this nation, the racist rhetoric is ramping up, and it seems like sometimes we're losing. But keep on running and keep your eyes on the one who has finished this race. He's not only watching, he's not only waiting, but he's also a winner, and he'll help us. Let me tell you about Frank Thomas. I was talking to Pastor Shell about Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas is one of my favorite students, straight A students. He now has 4 earned doctorates. 3 doctorates in ministry and a PhD from Memphis. Dr. Thomas made this point come alive for us. One Good Friday, every Good Friday we have the 7 last words of Christ preached. And I assigned him this particular year the word, it is finished. And he didn't go to John 19 to exegete all the things that Jesus had finished. He went to this Hebrews 12 passage, verse 2. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Let me paraphrase what Frank said 20 years ago. Frank Thomas used to run track when he was in college. His race of choice was the 440 relay race. Frank loved to run that race. Anybody here know about the 440 relay? Y'all watching the Olympics now? They call it 400 meters. Now, Frank secretly wanted to be the anchor man and run the anchor leg of that race. The anchor man is the one who gets all the cheers. He's the one who gets all the glory. He's the one who finishes the race with style, with grace, and with blinding speed. But Frank never could get his time up fast enough to be the anchor man, because track coaches always put their fastest man in that 4th leg slot, the anchor. And Frank's time, no matter how hard he tried, could never get anywhere near Billy's time. Billy was the anchor. Frank could not run the anchor. So Frank said then he wanted to be the lead-off man. See, because the lead-off man, when he fires out of them starting blocks, always look good. And if he could establish a lead as the lead-off man, folk would give him some props and give him some praise as having made a major contribution to the race that his team is going to win. But guess what? Frank never could get his time up fast enough to be the leadoff man, because track coaches always put their second fastest man as the leadoff man, so that the leadoff man can give the team a sure enough lead. That's why they call him the leadoff man. 4-4 440 relay coaches put the fastest man as the anchor, put the second fastest man as the leadoff, put the third fastest man in the number 2 position, and they put their slowest man in the number 3 position. And Frank never could get his time up to match or to beat the leadoff man or the number 2 man. So he was content to be number 3. He was the slowest man, but he said at least he made the team. He said he just had to learn how to run with patience and hold his position, hold on to a lead if his teammates had given him a lead. And in the last race of Dr. Frank Thomas's senior year in college, the race for the state championship 1 week before graduation, his mother and father were in the stands watching, waiting, and cheering him on. His wife, Joyce, they weren't married the day of that race, they got married the week after graduation. But Joyce, his fiance, was up in the stands watching, waiting, and cheering him on. His church members, he wasn't pastoring, these are the church members of the church where he grew up, like the little children running around here. Those are the folk who knew him when he was a kid, saw him up and down the aisles. They were all now watching him as a grown-up man, senior in college, up in the stand, church where his mother and father raised him. They had known him all his life. They were in those stands as witnesses, watching, waiting, and cheering him on. Frank said he was feeling good that day. No aches, no pains, no cramps, no Charlie horses. He was ready to run the best race of his life and the last race of his college career. Now, there were several other schools in the race, but only one school that was any real competition. Bam! The leadoff man took off. Tommy got them a lead. The lead was 10 to 12 yards at least to the closest competitor. The handoff between Tommy and Johnny was smooth and flawless. Johnny opened the lead up to 18 to 20 yards. This thing was in the bag, y'all. I don't know if you watched or you know anything about it, but in a relay race, you start running as your partner enters the zone so that you can be almost at full speed when he slaps that baton into your hand. Frank said that handoff was so sweet, it was like they were one flesh. And he was off in the wind. Breathing was just right. Stride was perfect. This probably will be his best time, he thought as he rounded that second curve. He could hear his members cheering him on. He thought he could hear his mama's voice as he hit that third turn. You know, you can always tell mama's voice. He thought he heard his mama's voice as he hit that third turn on the backstretch, but he heard something else that troubled him. He heard something else that almost distracted him. He heard something else that sounded louder to him than all the folk cheering for him in the stands. He heard some footsteps in the cinder track next to him getting louder and louder as the runner in the next lane got closer and closer. He said he wanted to look back, but they had trained him. You never look back once you start a race. I like that, Pastor Shaw. I wish I could hang out there for just a little while. You never look back once you start a race. If you're looking back, you can't see where you're going. If you're looking back, you lose focus. If you look back, you lose your place. You look back, you end up out of your lane. If you look back, you might end up disqualified if you look. So he said he did not look back, but the footsteps kept getting louder and kept getting closer. And then to his horror, the man in the next lane, representing their chief competitor, not only closed that 20-yard gap lead they had, not only caught up with him, was not only running past him, but also looked over at him and laughed at him, leered as they turned down the home stretch. And got at least 10 yards in front of him, and Frank heard the cheers in the stands turn to laughter in the stands. He said he was humiliated. He was beyond humbled. He was devastated. He was embarrassed. Frank said he just wanted to cut across the grass, go to his locker room, get his keys, and just drive off to God knows where, so he would not have to see all those people he had let down, people who saw him humiliated by a runner who seemed twice as fast as he. He said he tried kicking harder. Nothing. He tried everything he knew. Nothing. He tried everything the trainers had taught him. Nothing. It was no use. It was all over. When he looked up ahead, only this time not looking at his competitor who was leaving him in the dust, he looked in his lane, and Billy, the anchor man, was smiling at him, hand in the outstretched position, nodding at him, ready to start his run. He said that Billy's smile and Billy's nod not only encouraged him, but it reminded him that this race did not depend on him. This race was not over with him. There was a finisher waiting for the baton. Finisher waiting for him to put that baton in his hand. And he said to himself, if I can just get this baton to Billy, if I can just put it in his hand, he can and he will finish this race. Billy not only took the baton, Billy the anchor man, Billy the fastest man, Billy the finisher of the race. Billy caught the opposition. Billy passed the opposition. Billy shut the opposition down. Billy won the race, a winner, and set a new statewide record that day. He snatched a sweet victory from the ugly and certain jaws of the defeat that day. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're missing this. Let me remind you of another winner. Let me remind you of our winner, a winner who finished the race. In fact, he's called the finisher of the race. He set an unbreakable record one day. It was a Friday to Sunday race. In fact, it was a 33-year long-distance race, all the way from Galilee through Golgotha to glory. He's the winner. He snatched a sweet victory from the ugly jaws of certain jaws of death that day. Look who's in the stands watching and waiting. Look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Jesus is in the stands sitting at the right hand of God. Look who's in the stands as we run our race. Tell your neighbor you're still missing it. Turn on the other side and say you are still missing this. The first leg of our race was run by Abraham, the father of the faith. Abraham was a good lead-off man. By faith, he started off not knowing where he was heading. He lied about his wife, but God's grace gave him a lead for the household of faith, his team. Abraham established a lead that was untouchable and incredible up on a mountain with his son on the altar, a knife in his hand, tears in his eyes. He found out how the Lord will provide. Abraham, the lead man, passed the baton of faith on to the prophets. And the prophets, whose allegiance was to God and not to government, the prophets ran a good race. The prophets opened up the race, gave God's gang a gap that seemed unconquerable. The race moved and the lead moved from incredible to unconquerable. But then the prophets handed the baton off to the church. And the church got out of his lane. The devil caught up with the church and cut the church's lead to ribbons. The church got into arguments about looking back. The church got mired down in the mud of what I call multiplication by division. The church split, division, into Protestantism, Catholicism, Greek Orthodox, Coptic, Egyptian Orthodox, Lutheranism, Calvinism, Anabaptist, and Wesleyan Methodism, and that split off from Anglicanism. The church got out of its lane. The church got to arguing. The church lost its lead. The Methodists split into AME, Zion, and CME. The Presbyterians split into Cumberland Presbyterians and United Presbyterians, the UPS Church of America. The Baptists split into 75 different Baptist denominations. And the Pentecostal split into 700 denominations at the last count. The church multiplied by dividing, multiplication by division, splitting. Church split. The church split over the issue of tongues. The church split over the doctrine of the Holy Spirit. The church split over how much water you need to baptize somebody when some of God's children don't have enough water to stay alive tonight. The church split over the issue of slavery. The church split over the issue of race. Black churches, it ain't just white people, y'all. Black churches split over the issue of complexion. High yellows over here, deep chocolate over yonder. The church split over the issue of music. No gospel over here, full gospel over there. No washboards are welcome. No tambourines will be tolerated. No drums and no dancing. Or we'll do liturgical dancing. Oh, but for God's sake, don't break into no holy dance. Not in a silk stocking church. The church split and the church blew its lead. When the prophets passed the baton on to the church, the enemy caught up with the church, passed her, looked at her, leered at her, laughed at her, left her in the dust of debates, disagreements, dogmatism, disputes, denominational dislikes, and doctrinal hair-splitting. That's the bad news this day for the 10 o'clock service. But that ain't the only news. Guess what the good news is? The race ain't over yet. Look up ahead. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The good news is that this race does not depend solely on the church. We're just running one leg of this race. Jesus is the finisher of this race, and he's the winner. His name is not Billy, but he's a bridge over troubled water. His name is not Billy, but he is a burden bearer. His name not Billy, but he is bread when you're hungry. His name not Billy, but he's a bridge, bright and morning star. Keep looking unto Jesus, who preached and practiced and risky gospel. Keep looking unto Jesus, who's already won and given us the victory. And if you look unto Jesus, he will give you a crown. I shall wear a crown, not because of me, but because of who finished this race for me. I shall wear a crown someday, soon as my feet strike Zion. Shout hallelujah, it's all over. Not because of my strength, not because of my goodness, but because of his grace. I shall wear a crown someday. Keep looking unto the finisher of your faith. Come on and give God some winner of the faith glory. Give God some, come on, come on, come on, come on.